Welcome to Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity because here you'll find curiosities. I'm Wyatt Buckner of the Duluth News Tribune, and I will be your guide as we discover the unique and fascinating stories here in the Northland. Here we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. In this episode, we look at Hermantown's long-abandoned pet cemetery and what its future could look like. Let's venture forth into Northlandia. Here to talk about the past, present, and possible future for the burial site of over 1,000 pets is reporter Jimmy Lovren. Jimmy, welcome back. And did I get that right? Is it over 1,000?
According to the person who found it in a 2001 article of ours, she is quoted as saying, "I have way over 1,000 animals buried there."
Oofda. Okay, so let's just get right into it. How did you become aware of this pet cemetery, and maybe where exactly is it located? Because I've not, prior to you looking into the story and first talking about looking into it, that is the first I've heard of there being a pet cemetery, despite growing up in this area.
I think most people were not aware of this pet cemetery, in part because it has not been maintained for at least 20 years, right? And so anyway, it's up between kind of near Maple Grove Road, and then on Ugstad Road, you take a turn onto Sunnyview Road, okay? And there's two lots there, two parcels that make up this pet cemetery. So it's a gravel road with a couple single-family homes on it, and then kind of just a few, what you would, drive by and just think it's a vacant lot, is a pet cemetery. And I became aware of this after a few articles ran in a few local and statewide news organizations kind of had something about a rezoning effort going on that made it sound like this thing was about to be developed or something. And I don't know. It didn't sound, it didn't tell the full story of the pet cemetery and what was actually happening with the rezoning and what that actually meant. So I decided to kind of dig. Well, I didn't go digging. But
not literally digging, more reporter
exactly.
dig.
Try to find out more about it and tell more complete story, hopefully without clickbaitiness. And because when this emerged, thanks to a social media post by a well-followed lost pet Facebook page here in the Twin Ports, it started quite the outcry that got out of hand pretty quick. And I didn't want to. We're a few weeks removed from that, but I also didn't want to feed into that. I want to actually, here's this place, here's this rezoning. What does this actually mean? What is this place? That's what I was hoping to be able to share with readers.
Mm-hmm. And preparing for this article, did you read or watch Stephen King's Pet Cemetery? And are there any relations between the two?
I skimmed the Wikipedia page. Yeah, no, I beyond that, I don't really know what happens, and I didn't really pay that much close attention, except, there's ample opportunity for, I guess, comparisons to that. I won't make them because I haven't read the book or seen the movie, show, whatever it is. But the Wikipedia page made it seem kind of creepy.
Yeah, hopefully not. But in all seriousness, back to the origins of the pet cemetery. Like, when was it actually a pet cemetery? Because you had mentioned that it had not been maintained properly for at least 20 years. So when was it actually maintained, and when did it start up, and maybe why did it start up?
Yeah, so according to the Hermantown city documents related to this rezoning, it was, since probably about the 60s, it began to be a pet cemetery, right? And it was started and run by a woman named Jo Brand, and it was Brand's Pet Cemetery. She died in 2021, but she had a lifelong love of animals and pets. In her obituary, she bred collies. She had a cat named Tuesday. She fed the deer outside her kitchen window, and then her photo in her obit is a photo of her young. I don't know how old, maybe 20 or so, and she's holding a collie in the photo. So a pet lover. And then I looked in our archives, and we had a story from 2001 about the grief around losing a family pet. She said that her 5-acre cemetery was opened then in the 70s. So the dates are a little different than what the city said, but of the 5 acres, 3 had been filled. And she said, quote, "I have way over 1,000 animals buried here. people want their pets to have a proper resting place instead of just being thrown away like garbage. So yeah, it was a place where if you had a pet that died, you could pay for a lot. I talked to one woman whose family buried their dog. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. It's Never Again backwards. So it was a Schnauzer, died in the late 80s, named Raven Niaga. It's the words Never Again backwards. Anyway, she buried that her dog there in the late 80s and would go and visit, kind of in the years or in the time kind of following the death of their beloved family dog. And at the time, it was well kept. Headstones, if there were headstones, they were like concrete pavers, like patio pavers with glued on letters. But she said that a lot of graves were marked with like paint sticks. And she said she remembers probably paying about $100 to get the plot there. But, life happens, things get busy. Although she lived in the area, she's admitted, she's like, life happens, things move on. I haven't been up there, and so when she found out about the rezoning and the opportunity to go up there and remove headstone or even disinter the animals, she chose not to remove her dog or dig up her dog. She just took the headstone, but she was very grateful for that. And unlike some people online, was not angry about the possible rezoning. She gets it. She hasn't been up there in decades. A lot of other people haven't been up in there decades. It's abandoned. Anyone could have gone up there and maintained it in a way or something. They didn't. And so she's like, she fully supports the new owner doing whatever he wants to this property. So anyway, that's kind of what it looks like now, is just, again, a vacant lot overgrown with, wildflowers. And now, because people saw the news stories, and then there was also what kind of tipped those news stories off earlier this month was a notice in the Hermantown Star just about it being rezoned and people being allowed through the end of the month to go up there and, remove what they want. And so there's quite a bit of matted down walkways through there and stuff. And so I went out there. The only structure there is like an A-frame shed that's, rotting away off to the side. And then I did find some of those patio paver headstones, kind of a line of them that people had cleared. There was some removed, right? Like just a square there where the headstone once had sat. There was like old artificial flowers that had weathered a bit, but were still, obviously flowers kind of by one headstone. Yeah, and the lettering on some of the headstones were glued on, and so I couldn't make out the names of the dog or whatever animal was buried under there, but that's kind of the state it's in. Has not, and apparently has been that way for 2 decades or so. So, yeah, the woman I spoke to was very in support of, whatever happens. It's, doesn't mean she said, doesn't mean she loves her dog any less. Just, we've all moved on, right? I mean, if people hadn't, maybe it would be in a different state today, I guess, was kind of her point.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, like, this is like an official thing. Like you could buy plots of land to bury your pet there at one point in time?
It was not a like official designated. It was, this woman was selling plots on property she owned, but it wasn't like it like predated any sort of the Hermantown did not know it was there. Whatever existed at the time it started did not.
So kind of yes and no.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it's kind of official in that like she's selling off the lot. She was selling off the lots for people to bury their pets at, but it's not necessarily in a regulated fashion of sorts. It's not like a field or an area people just started burying their pets at randomly, willy-nilly.
It's a little, I mean, it'd be somewhere in between that, right?
Yeah.
No, not regulated, not official, but she was selling those, space for people to bury.
At the very least, it's more regulated, or it's a little more thought out and planned than, say, like the toy graveyard in our previous episode, where they're just kind of pinned to the they just started happening.
Exactly. It's not some people didn't just start settling on one area where they would dig a hole and put their pet. This was at least oversaw by this Joe Brand, who was a pet lover and wanted people to have that space for their pets. But again, there was no like oversight from any sort of, it wasn't really known to any regulator or anything like that, because it was done a long time ago. And so people, if they had a pet there, they knew about it. But beyond that, yeah, kind of was a mystery for a lot of people. There are no, to my understanding, there's no like map showing where all the 1,000 plus pets are. Mm-hmm. So again, there aren't very many headstones. So that's, to be able to know what is what and where is where, what is where, it's tricky. So yeah, it's kind of a mix between, definitely wasn't official, but wasn't some sort of, everyone just decided to start burying their pets there without anything. It was this woman who was kind of managing it.
Yeah.
Property she owned, she used as a pet cemetery. And now there are other pet cemeteries in the area that are quote official, and whatever that entails. They're the real deal, I guess, if you want to call it. But this, predated it. So,
and why did it kind of fall off the map, or why did it just kind of go to the wayside? Like what?
From what I'm understanding, she just became older, and she died when she was 90. Let's see here, she was born in 1928. Yeah, she was 92. So 20 years, that's, she'd have been 72, right? That's for anyone, I think, maintaining, property into your, 80s, 90s. That gets tough, right? And so reading her obit, it sounds like she started to kind of maybe slow down a little bit, but still loved feeding the deer, even as, it said, it became more difficult to manage her kennel, but she still remained connected to animals by feeding deer and having her beloved cat named Tuesday. So it sounds just with age harder to be able to maintain that property. So that's kind of how I understand it. It just kind of faded from use, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And you already talked about or you mentioned the public outcry, particularly from the Facebook group. Yeah. What exactly was the misunderstanding?
Yeah.
And how strong of a backlash was because of this misunderstanding?
So the rezoning, we haven't talked about that yet. And to be clear, this was zoned in Hermantown as R3 residential through 2016 when it became zoned public. And now they're wanting the current owner who inherited the property when Joe died in 21 has requested it be rezoned back to what it was prior to 2016. So back to residential. If you don't understand that, you think rezoning means getting ready for development. If you don't understand where it is, down a dead end dirt road next to a bunch of single family homes, I think a lot of people imagined like another quick trip, like, the city's getting ready for whatever store or another quick trip or a whatever
Costco
development. Yeah, exactly. Like I think in people's minds, it was like, whoa, the city's coming for this. And the city doesn't have anything to do with this except whether, to give the thumbs up or thumbs down, I suppose, to the rezoning. What happens after that is up to the property owner who did not return a request for comment. But it's always been a private property. So from what I understand, even if it was zoned public, could do whatever you want to the property anyway. So yeah, it just kind of makes it, it'll match the zoning of everything around it again. What's planned there, I don't know. So I think people had in their mind that the city was, coming with bulldozers to do something and whatever. And the backlash, because things lacked context in those original articles and the simple notice in the Hermantown Star, I think people imagined the worst, imagined bad intentions, imagined all these different things. And so when it was shared, the reason I think the news organizations found out about it was because it was shared by a Facebook group, Missing Pets in the Northland. And they've got a big following of people who keep an eye open for the pets that are there and missing. And anyway, a lot of mad people reacting to it. And the original post was then deleted, and an updated post, Missing Pets in the Northland tried to provide a little bit more context and then said, "We are absolutely appalled that the city of Hermantown employees are now receiving death threats. Absolutely unacceptable." So apparently the outcry included a death threat. I spoke with Assistant City Administrator Joe Wicklin. He didn't discuss any specific communications or threats or anything like that, but he kind of more broadly said that original social media post really lacked context, and so people reacted more aggressively than if they had known it was just a simple rezoning. So apparently, according to this Facebook page, there was a death threat. But anyway, so that was first week, maybe second week of August. It was August 6th was the updated post, and on Monday, the 19th, was the first reading of the ordinance that would rezone this, get the opportunity for the public to speak on it. Well, there were no public comments on it. So it seems like the outcry remained online. And I don't know if the people, online outrage is, yeah,
you can do a lot with a lot more anonymity,
Exactly. It actually takes some effort to show up in public. And again, I spoke to one woman. I was browsing Facebook to try to find people who had pets there, and I found one woman, and she was very, understood. Amy Garthus of Hermantown. She, again, this was her schnauzer that was buried there since the late 80s. And she was very understanding that, it's a beautiful piece of property on a nice, quiet road. Who wouldn't want to do something, whatever, with it? And again, she said, gee, it hasn't, the way it looks now, that tells you everything you need to know about how those of us with pets buried there have, thought about it and used the space for the last 2 decades. So, yeah, there are people who understand the nuances of it and are sympathetic and are less, keyboard warrior. Yeah, exactly. So, there's a little bit of difference of opinions there, but again, there'll be another reading their first meeting in September, which I believe is Tuesday after Labor Day. I think that's when the next reading is expected. So I suppose people could speak there if they really felt strongly about it. But again, the as made clear in the Hermantown Star public notice, the current owner is allowing folks to get up there and remove anything that they want, up to and including the pet itself. If they wanted to remove the dog or cat or whatever is buried up there, they can, or just grab a headstone, whatever. And so I think most people are probably, if anything, going to grab a headstone. But again, this hasn't been touched in 20 years. It started in the 60s or 70s. I don't really know how many people, there might not be a ton of people who still are still around who had their pet there, right? There probably is some, there's 1,000 pets there. But that's kind of where things are at and why we became aware of it, and hopefully I helped paint a more complete picture of that so people know what it was, what it isn't, what it, I guess, could become, which it right now is in, the zoning is allows for, it's design R3 designation. My understanding is, Hermantown needs to plan for, public utilities in that zoning, because it could include up to, the highest density housing if the demand needs it, but nothing. It's a dead end dirt road where it's all single family homes, a handful. There's only a few on that road. So to imagine it's going to be suddenly an apartment building, I think is very incorrect. And then commercial spaces, again, I don't know why you would want a commercial space on a gravel dead end road. That would require more permitting too. So not a whole lot functionally changes. It's more of a on paper, on a map designation that is changing here. And again, nothing's really changed there for 20 years. So that's kind of where things are at with the old brand pet cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this is like a gentle reminder to listeners and in general, be wary and careful when sharing any news or information online, and make sure that there's context.
Yes.
Context is key and is everything. It can make one story, one thing, or make it completely interpreted another way without that proper context.
Right. And I'm willing to bet that folks are willing at city halls. I'm not going to speak for Hermantown or anywhere, but I bet if you want to find out more, you can ask a news organization, call City Hall, email them before you start, weighing in. Obviously, not that aggressively, but before you start forming an opinion on what should or should not happen, you can take it upon yourself to learn more without following one post on Facebook.
Yeah. I'm surprised that there is such a strong backlash, considering it has been abandoned for 20 years, and there wasn't much of a physical presence at the actual reading of the rezoning. I wonder how much of that is just people looking for an excuse to be angry or mad online. It caused a rally behind, because, like, we've seen other local like ordinances like in Duluth recently that have had a major public outcry, and it was felt like at the council meetings, and like this one's not the case. So I don't know. That's just interesting. I'd love to have an actual conversation with someone that's like actually like upset and angry about it, like genuinely, and like, why are you upset or angry? It hasn't been used for 20 plus years. Right. Why do you care? I don't know.
And I get it. I mean, obviously it'd be different. It's very different from a human cemetery.
Right.
If people had the idea that it would be kind of in perpetuity, that their pet would be there, I get how that could maybe be tough to learn, but yeah, it's not a human cemetery. And so I mean, people can, I get why there'd be complex feelings around that, right? I mean, if you thought you buried a dog there 50 years ago and they'd, be there forever, and now you're not so sure. I mean, we don't know what's happening. I mean, again, it's rezoning. There's no plans at this time. I mean, and if there are, it's private property. Maybe in retrospect, there should have been a mechanism, that ensured it remained in perpetuity, but, that wasn't the case. So
wasn't properly regulated.
Yeah.
Like we had mentioned before. It's
right.
not an official pet cemetery of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I get why there would be some hard feelings, but there are no plans right now to do that. And this is, again, just a simple rezoning. So
yeah. So, Jimmy, why did you feel like this was a good addition to Northlandia? I mean, it definitely on paper sounds strange and weird, and we've definitely talked about graveyards of sorts in the past on this podcast.
Yeah, I think I mean, again, I've not read the book, seen the movie or show, whatever it is, Pet Sematary, the Stephen King thing. But I know like that's a thing. So I was a little bit attracted. I mean, it's got a creepy weird factor a little bit. But also so there's that, I guess. But there is also just the fact that that is abandoned. Most people, unless they have a pet there, or maybe grew up in the area near, the immediate area of this, aren't aware of it. And then also the opportunity to maybe clear up some of the misinformation. I mean, that's just journalism 101, I guess. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how I approached it. Because I mean, coming off what I saw online right away, I was in the same, I think the immediate reaction, the immediate thoughts when you see rezoning or whatever is bulldozers at the ready for development. And then all of a sudden there was something about death threats. And I was like, holy cow, what are these, like what's going on up there? I was imagining, people are going to be like chaining themselves together and blocking development. And then it's like you make a couple of phone calls and find out like you do like 10 minutes of research and you find out that it's, no, it's not that. And so then, hopefully, it's out there already. Maybe this can provide that context that was lacking immediately.
Well, I think we'll wrap up there, though. Thanks you so much for joining, Jimmy. I'm curious to see where we end up next. We went from, a bunker house and now a pet cemetery. So I'm curious where we end up next. Next to be Joan on here.
Me too. I don't know yet. We'll figure something out.
Throw us your ideas.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. I'll see you next time, Jimmy.
All right. Thanks, Wyatt.
And thank you for joining us on this venture into Northlandia. To read the article for this week's column and see photos, visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/topics/Northlandia. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to support us, consider becoming a subscriber of the Duluth News Tribune at DuluthNewsTribune.com/subscribe. Join us again next time and discover the extraordinary stories that you just might miss. You're in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beam path of the North Shore Turn, here in Northlandia.